Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by French professor who asks the question, is The Smile as good as Radiohead in concert? No, that's a ridiculous question, right? I mean, it must be a ridiculous question. I've seen hundreds of shows, and I personally think that Radiohead is the best band I've ever seen in concert. That includes the great jam bands, Grateful Dead and the Fish. That includes Nirvana and a bunch of past greats. That includes Prince. That includes so many great artists that I have seen live. And I think Radiohead, with its combination of great songwriting, amazing performance, exuberance, virtuosity, all of it coming together with a sort of loose and powerful and tight feel all at once, nothing has ever been as good as Radiohead live. So why would I even ask you if The Smile, the solo project of two members of Radiohead, Johnny Greenwood, Tom York, along with the drummer of Sons of Kemet, Tom Skinner. Why would I even ask? Am I just trolling for clicks? I got you. Excuse me. I don't edit my videos, so you're just gonna have to watch me drink a little bit of water now. Am I just trolling for clicks? No, because the answer isn't actually no. The Smile is not as good as Radiohead. But I would say that they are as good as Radiohead when Radiohead is not at 100%. Does that make sense? So, I've seen Radiohead maybe 5 or 6 times. The first show I saw was back in '95 in Boston at the Paradise Lounge, a very small show. The last show I saw of them, unfortunately, was the Haiti concert in LA. So, I've seen them on many tours. I've seen them many times. And they're not always firing on all cylinders. Not always. And that's how good The Smile is, which isn't actually an insult. It's actually high praise. What makes The Smile so great, and to see them live, is that it is actually, I think, the only authentic version of The Smile itself. The album is great. I really enjoy the album. I did a review of it. You can check it out. I'll put a link to it at the end of this video. I like it. It's a great album. But it feels like an album of a band that you should see live. Like a Grateful Dead album or a Fish album or King Gizzard. Like you feel like the strength of the music comes from people who like each other, excellent musicians, goofing around, unencumbered by the legacy of Radiohead, playing together. And what makes these 3 musicians so great is that they have that virtuosity and taste. Listening to virtuoso musicians can be great, but if they don't have taste, it's just sort of noodling around. It's notes for notes. It's time signatures for time signatures. So it's the promise of The Smile, is seeing them live. So I hate to say this because I don't want to encourage FOMO. I missed the Moonshaped Pool tour. Hell, I missed the OK Computer tour. We all miss stuff. And I don't want to give you terrible FOMO. But I will say that if you haven't seen The Smile in concert, and I don't mean watching clips on YouTube, I don't mean listening to bootlegs, I mean if you haven't been in the audience watching The Smile, you don't know what The Smile is. You've never heard The Smile. It is a live experience. And in that way, they might even be better than seeing Radiohead because it's more urgent to see these musicians together, coming to life, working together. I will say it is definitely better than Atoms for Peace. I saw that show and I left early. That felt like a midlife crisis for Tom York. I don't need to see Flea bopping around while Tom York... It was bad. It was bad. That's my official take. I like the albums. I like all of Tom York's solo albums, but that concert was painful. The Smile feels very, very different. So if you can see them live, see them live. They played a lot of new songs, so maybe they're releasing a new album. Maybe it's not too late. Maybe I want them to break up so that Radiohead can release an album. I'm conflicted. So that's my brief introduction, and I'm going to get into the review of the whole concert, track by track, going really into depth about what makes it so great. But first, I'm going to go to Professor Skye's story time. Now, if you don't like that, okay, some people don't like the personal stuff. Some people are just coming here to see just the analysis. That's cool. To be honest, I kind of hate YouTubers with too much lore. Like fake characters and all that stuff. And so I don't have lore, but I do tell the truth about my life, and my life has my family. How did I get to the show? What happens? Why do I hate driving in Toronto? So if you don't care about that, click to I'll include a little timestamp in the description if you want to get right to the show. Okay? Okay. I went to the show with my son. And if you don't know this, my son is a minor internet celebrity. If there was a Radiohead iceberg, my son would be on that iceberg. In 2007, we were waiting for my oldest daughter to be born, okay? And it was right when In Rainbows came out. And we listened to it all the time. Partly because my 2-year-old son liked the music enough that he asked for it all the time. So my 2-year-old son memorized all the lyrics to the song Weird Fishes by Radiohead. I uploaded a video of me playing Weird Fishes on guitar and him singing. It's got, I don't know, 60,000 views. It's one of the cutest things in the world. You want to see me with long hair? It's a cool video. So that's how much my son loves Radiohead. You know, I mean, for Christmas last year, I got my friend Bruce White, Velvet Geek, to make this black velvet portrait of Tom York. The more you look at it, the more you like it. So part of what made this show special was that it should have been the second time that my son saw Tom York. So we moved from California, Santa Barbara, where I got my doctorate, to the Rochester, New York area, where I work. And it's really tough because some shows come to Buffalo, and you'd think, oh, just go to New York, but New York is like 6 hours away. So Toronto is the closest place. The thing about Toronto is you have to cross the border, which is fine. Sometimes it's harder than others. But the main thing is you got to deal with Toronto. So Toronto, I believe, grows by 1% every year. They do not have enough infrastructure, especially on the roads, to accommodate for the number of people that live there. Every year you go there, there's another gigantic high-rise on the outskirts of town, and you're just like, where are they going to put all these people? And then it appears as though the Toronto Town Board was like, I don't care. Just write the check. We got blackberries to make, people. This boom is never going to end, all right? So Toronto is just a mess to get to. It's this weird sort of give and take. I would rather drive to a concert in New York City and deal with New York City traffic any day of the week than having to go to Toronto. That's how bad it is. But the good news was we were set to see, right after moving to Rochester, we were set to see Radiohead play at Downsview Park in Toronto. Very, very cool. So we go there. Traffic wasn't too bad. It was at a park, and then traffic got bad, and then traffic got real bad. And then we were in traffic for 2 hours getting up to the parking lot. And we get up to the parking lot, and seriously, Wally World, sorry folks, park's closed. The guy says the concert's been canceled, turn around. We had been in traffic for 2 hours for a concert that had been canceled 4 hours ago. But we didn't have the internet. We didn't have smartphones. I don't know how we didn't know. So it turns out somebody died, okay? A young man died on the set crew, on the crew, and Radiohead did what they had to do. They canceled the show. So you can imagine the disappointment, my 4 or 5-year-old son who just loves Radiohead. No, 7-year-old son just loves Radiohead. His favorite band. He's a minor internet celebrity because of Radiohead, and he didn't get to see the show. 2018, they play in Toronto, but my son's at scout camp. So this was the year. It wouldn't be Radiohead, but it would at least be The Smile. It at least wouldn't be Atoms for Peace. And we almost didn't go. He went to Thanksgiving with his birth mother, and cool, but it was like the show was on Saturday, Thanksgiving's on Thursday. It's like, that's a lot to ask to bring him back early. But then I listened to the album again. I'm like, wait a minute. This is going to be so good. Like, I cannot allow this to pass. I must have this happen. Fortunately, his birth mother understands the importance of music to his life. It's one thing that we've always agreed on. And, also, like, my son's a drummer, and seeing, I hope he sees Phil Selway someday, the drummer for Radiohead, who's one of the best rock drummers. But Tom Skinner's like a special drummer, like a special fancy, great drummer. So I just knew that he had to go. So they drive back. They get here on time. He arrives at 2 o'clock. The show starts at 8. Toronto is 3.5 hours away. No problem. My daughter is sick as hell. So sick. Like breathing, nose, fever. And I've got a newborn in the house. So does she have RSV? Does she have the flu? We have to cancel. We can't go. We just can't go. I can't be in a car with someone who just spent 6 hours in a car with a super sick person. What do we decide? We drive with masks. Okay. So, we're driving to Toronto, both of us wearing masks the entire time, Purell everywhere, hoping that I don't get my newborn child sick. We leave at 3 o'clock. With 3.5 hours drive, according to Waze, we should get there at 7, which is perfect. The doors open at 8. What could possibly go wrong? We stop, as we always do, at the A&W off of the Queens Expressway. There's like an A&W there. It's not very good, but we just stop there anyways. And then I read online that usually the band starts 2.5 hours after the doors open. So I'm like, good, because at this point we're set to arrive at 7:30. So I thought there might be a little bit of traffic. So I'm like, okay, fine, cool. We'll get there at 7:30. I mean, we'll be waiting. They'll go on at 10:30, no problem. And then we get to Toronto. We get to the Gardiner Expressway, and it's bumper to bumper, 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 all the way through. I thought, how bad could this possibly get? Toronto, get your shit together. There is this intersection where I've driven all over the world, my friends. I am a world traveler. Okay, I've never been to Calcutta, but I can't imagine that Calcutta is worse than this one intersection off the Gardiner Expressway where you're trying to go left onto York, and there's 2 lanes that are trying to go right and 2 lanes that are trying to go left, and no, everyone's too polite and too rude at the same time. Everyone just lets everybody in, and then also all these people are gaming the system. I was seriously parked trying to get left lane for half an hour. Parked. Some dude rolls down the window, starts talking to me. Very polite guy. Starts talking to me about how terrible it is. I'm like, yeah, I know it's terrible. Meanwhile, I'm watching the time just spin. Finally, I say, screw it. I'm not going to go left. I'm going to go straight. I'm going to go straight. I'm going to figure it out. But you look at Waze, and whenever there's lots of traffic, it's red. The whole thing is red. All red lines. The thing looks like an American suburb. It's like terrible. Just red lines everywhere. Red lines, red lines. But I just go, and then I turn around, and then I'm looking at Waze, and then Waze, I don't realize, thinks that I'm on the expressway above me. So it keeps telling me to do different things depending on where I drive. It tells me to go straight, it tells me to go left, it tells me to pull a U-turn. It doesn't know where I am. I scream out wishing that my wife is there. My son calms me down. Finally, I figure out how to get onto York Street. I take a right. It all worked out. At this point, it's 8:30 and it takes it's like 8:25. And it takes half an hour to drive a quarter mile to get to the parking lot, get to this weird little parking lot, pull out, walk in line. And I'm all chill because I have until 10:30. We both go to the bathroom, check out the merch table. Cool. Neat. We get this shirt. We get this poster with the specific date on it. Hey, concert. Hey, bands. This is all we want. We just want merch with the actual show that we saw. That's it. Simple as hell. It's great. And but I figure we've got an hour and a half, so who cares, We haven't even seen the venue yet. We're sitting there hanging around. We buy these things. 5 minutes till showtime. It says, we're like, cool. I mean, we'll see a little bit of Robert Stillman, the opening act. No big deal, My son looks around. He's like, I didn't know what the crowd would look like, but everyone in this crowd looks like Johnny Harris. My son's a funny guy. That's a very good description. If you don't know the YouTuber Johnny Harris, look him up. That's what everyone looks like at a Radiohead concert. And so, we're just kind of sitting there. There's this weird thing where this guy gets into a screaming match at the bar because all of the merch and all of the alcohol is in this little basement dungeon at Massey Hall. So Massey Hall is a great historic hall in the university area of Toronto. And we walk through the university area to get there. It's very vibrant, very nice. But it's not very well laid out for modern day merch and alcohol purchases. So some guy gets into a screaming match with the security guard. And some dude walks by and he's like, this guy's really killing my vibe. I'm like, I know. And then we just, cool, get the t-shirt, walk up. And then it turns out, setlist.fm was totally wrong. The Smile was going on. So all that stress, all that driving, all that screaming at the terrible, terrible civic engineering, the non-civic engineering of Toronto. I'm never going back to Toronto to see a concert again. Never. Ever, ever, ever. Okay, I'm seeing Stromae on Tuesday. After that, I'm going to keep going. I can't help it. I love Toronto. It's a great city. But it doesn't have a good layout. After all that, we end up walking in at the exact moment that the show starts. So we're in the back. Hi, by the way. Did you just join me? Did you skip the whole thing where I talked about being stuck in Toronto traffic? That's okay. I'm here now. I'm talking about the show now. So I'm at the back of the floor. I had to scalp tickets. Thank you all for watching the concert video review of Playboi Carti. That made enough money that it could justify me buying scalped tickets for floor seats. But I was fixing to be in the pit. That is what I was fixing to do. So I'm glad that I did. The balconies were all full, but no one was dancing. No one was even moving around. They were just sitting there like little statues. It's weird. So we're at the back of the pit, but still we're so close. And my son is like, "That's them!" Like, he's so excited, you know? His favorite musicians right there. And he gets to see them so close, you know? And what I want to do now is I want to take you back to when I was like my son's age. And I saw a band reform. The key members of a band reform and perform a concert. Okay, I'm gonna do this throughout this entire video. This is the kind of thing that I can do as an old guy that the younger YouTubers can't do, because they didn't see Robert Plant and Jimmy Page play at the Boston Garden in 1996. No, 95. The same time that I saw Radiohead for the first time, I saw the two primary songwriters for Led Zeppelin perform together. It was like one of these "this will never ever happen" things, you know? They got together and they played. So I'm going to be drawing comparisons throughout as to why The Smile is so good. Now, this blew my mind. I saw Page and Plant in 1995, which was 26 years after the first Led Zeppelin album. I saw The Smile in 2022, 29 years after the first Radiohead album, which means, in theory, Tom York and Johnny Greenwood should have seemed older to me than Robert Plant and Jimmy Page in the 90s. Spoiler alert, they don't. Johnny Greenwood is a vampire. He does not age. He looks younger than he did in 1995. Tom York is just a cool old dude. Like, he just always looks cool. He just can't help it. You know, he never seemed young, so it doesn't matter that he's older now. So this is really quite fascinating to see that this, as a child of the 90s, that kind of nostalgia tour is a shorter distance than this was to the beginning of Radiohead. So, you know, I mean, there's obviously big differences. You know, Radiohead never broke up. Page and Plant at this point, you know, Robert Plant had a couple okay solo albums. Who can forget Jimmy Page's soundtrack to Death Wish 2? So not exactly totally vibrant. Also, I missed Robert Stillman. I missed the open act. And I wish that I missed the opening act for Page and Plant. It was Rusted Root. God, everyone really romanticizes music in the 90s, but don't forget that the 90s also brought us Himanamawe, Himawe, Himanamawe, Himawe. Oh my God, I hated Rusted Root. They were even worse live. So anyways, I'm gonna do some more comparisons as we go through here. And also at the beginning of the show, I want to talk to you about a character. Tall Beer Man. That's what I call him. I'm not a short guy. I'm like 6'1". All my brothers are 6'5", so I feel short, but realistically, I'm a fairly tall guy. This guy had to be 6'3", and like big, like a big dude. Like in my little mind, he played for the Toronto Marlies, the minor league team for the Toronto Maple Leafs and Canada. I'm a racist. What are you gonna say? You know, and I call him Tall Beer Man because he just kept crushing beers. He was tall and he kept crushing beers. He crushed 2 beers during the first song, and halfway through the first song, his girlfriend shows up and gives him another. And he's drinking these Peroni Tall Boys. So Tall Beer Man, let's pretend his full name is Tall Boy Peroni Beer Man, because that's what he's drinking. Okay? So it's interesting because when you're in a pit, you don't want to be behind someone who's bigger than you. But this guy was an immovable mass, like right in front of me, right there. So it was good because I wasn't right behind him, but I was right next to him. So people behind us were really stuck. So I'll sort of tell you more stories about him as we go. But the show starts with The Same. The song The Same. Which, to be honest, is not one of my favorite songs on the album. I feel it's a little bit too, downbeat as an opener. But it works. We see these 3 workers of musicianship. You know, there's not a lot of audience interaction. They're there to work and they're there to play together. They're not really there for our like amusement. They're there so we can see them play this music together. And just by halfway through, I just slapped my son on the... well, not him. I would have been slapping Tall Beerman. I slapped my son on the shoulder like 3 times, just like, it's so worth it. The whole show, my son and I were looking at each other with our our masks and just doing that, you know, like, you know, what I mean? I know he's gonna get the same wrinkles I have right there from going to shows like this, you know. We were so happy. It was so good seeing Tom York, Johnny Greenwood, and Tom Skinner playing together. You know, like we've listened to the album so much, we're just excited for the way Tom York sings "People," and you know, like we're sitting there and we look at each other and we sing "People." You know that thing you do in concerts where you're with someone and you both love the music and you're there together and you know the words that are coming. People. Yeah, that's why you fix to be in the pit, which we did. We were fixing to be in the pit. We fixed to be in the pit because you need that, like that kind of interaction happens best when you're just in that mass of people. What I like is that they didn't just go right into the opposite. Whenever you have a band that's touring one album, it's like, what are you doing? So especially if you start off with the first song, I'm like, oh no, they're not just going to play the whole album in sequence, are they? So they interrupted it with Thin Thing. Now, I want to thank StacksMaxwell. I don't know who this person is, but he uploaded a video of this performance from this concert. Click on the banana above the poster, okay? This is an example of what The Smile is in concert. This might have been the best song in the entire show. It's hard to tell. There's so many highlights. Now, this is the problem for you. This is a great video, but it doesn't do it justice. It does not do it justice. But it will help you to give at least an idea of how great it is. Or if you have seen The Smile in concert, this will remind you of what it's like. Because the thing is, when you're watching them in concert, all three of them are equally interesting for different reasons. They're all playing different instruments all the way throughout. They're all doing different things. It's always this constant combination of prog and funk. And I didn't know that I wanted that combination because that sounds gross. Like I throw up in my mouth just a little bit when I say prog funk. Ugh, that sounds bad. Ugh. How can something be prog and funk at the same time? Is this going to be like that Extreme album, Porno Graffiti? Deep cut. Definitely from Boston. They're just so good. So this is what I suggest you do. Watch this clip 3 times. And each time just focus on 1/3 of the screen. Johnny Greenwood. How effortlessly is he playing this crazy guitar line? It's basically like a slap bass line that's also a guitar line. His right and his left are doing amazing things. He doesn't miss a single note of this insanely complicated line, and yet he plays it with ease. That's what I'm talking about. These are virtuoso musicians who have such great taste. At times, Johnny will switch to picks, and he's playing, and you're sitting there and you're staring at him being like, this dude is 10 years older than me. Why does he still look? Damn it. What is this guy doing? Is he on that island from Lost? God, is it just the hair? If you pull back his hair, would he look like the Crypt Keeper? Anyways, you're sitting there. Maybe you're not thinking that. But he switches to a pick for the hard distorted parts, just back and forth, just effortlessly performing this amazingly complicated song. What if we just watched Tom Skinner, the drummer? So deep in this complicated groove, in this pocket. He is like a great funk drummer who can lay down a pocket and stay in a pocket and make you just feel like you're there. And he's like a great prog drummer who's like trained by jazz musicians. He plays for Sons of Kemet, a great jazz band. Like at the conservatory, as at the conservatory of Bellingham upon Sussex. I don't know where this guy went to school, but you get the sense he went to school. He's got like the extra snare, which all the cool British jazz drummers have, like the guy from Go Go Penguin. It's just this sort of cool, but like he's doing all the time signatures. He's just so effortless. And as a musician, if you're a musician at all, like me, I am a mediocre multi-instrumentalist. I can play all the rock and roll instruments as well as your drunk uncle. I am like that uncle, it's just I don't get drunk. It's astounding to see such complicated things played with such ease and such joy. And he's like playing on the rims, he's doing hi-hat work, he's doing cymbal work, like when the song gets kind of harder, It gets hard, it gets soft. It's just perfectly in sync. Just perfectly syncopated and in sync. And this is why I want to bring back Page and Plant. They had Michael Lee on drums. I had to look him up. I don't know who he is. And obviously they couldn't get their original drummer. He was quite dead. 16 years at that point, I think. 16, 17 years. But they wanted a studio musician. They just wanted somebody who could play the parts. And for bass, they didn't even ask John Paul Jones to join them, which for me, John Paul Jones was my favorite member of Led Zeppelin at the time. He may still be. I was like, what the hell? Like, why not have John Paul Jones there? They had some guy named Charlie Jones play bass for them. He just used to play, he's just a studio musician, just whatever. Their job is to do what the other guys did, which is why The Smile is so special, which is why it is not Page and Plant in 1995. This is much more, because Tom Skinner has a style, Tom Skinner has an approach, Tom Skinner has a skill set, and that skill set has to be him. You cannot get someone else to play in this band. It's not just Radiohead without three of the members. It's The Smile with these three members. This prog funk thing happening here. Who am I forgetting? I'm forgetting Thom. I remember reading his name for the first time. It must have been in the Pablo Honey liner notes, and I read it as Thom. I didn't know you didn't pronounce. It's kind of obnoxious, Tom, but it's spelled Thom. I'm talking about Thom Yorke here, and if you watch him, you'll get the idea of the movement and the genius of their songwriting and their performance. He opens up using a vocoder on a keyboard, which is kind of cool because I don't think that's actually on the studio version. He's singing these opening lines, kind of unexpected. So we have the guitar, and then and it's all kind of happening here. Sort of even kind of freaking out and doing a little bit of his little dancey thing that he does, his little funky worm dance, The vocoder strengthens and deepens the song, right? So the song needs deepening because there's only three of them. There's only three of them for most of the time, and you're like, how are they going to get enough sound? And then he jumps up on the bass, and he starts playing bass, and he starts singing and playing bass at the same time, which if you don't know is very difficult. There's a lot of things to complain about when it comes to Sting, but one of the things you cannot complain about is how well he can play bass and sing at the same time. It's very difficult. And I know that Thom Yorke is a great bass player because his solo albums have just nothing but great bass lines. But here, he's playing this crazy descending bass line from the studio version, and then he starts to sing along with it. And then that becomes that other part of the song, which is part of what makes it one of the best songs on the album. Da, na, 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 na. A part that seems like it can only be done in the studio, but here he is playing it. And meanwhile, the drummer's just going so well, and he's singing so high and so low. He's even doing rock star hands at times, and this crazy outro bit, just the beats of guitar and the drums on his bass, and then there's a heavy metal part towards the end even, where there's almost like Dazed and Confused, like Led Zeppelin, they just get so into it. And then the outro, how many things have I called the outro? There's so many different parts to the song, and when you watch it 3 times, you really get to see how much he's doing. How is Tom so good at singing and playing bass at the same time? That's not even one of his main skill sets. And then all of a sudden, just the drums, very simple guitar, very simple bass, and he says 1, 2, 3, and it cuts out. It's just amazing. And when you see the video, you'll get a feeling for it. Good. But if you can, you really have to see it live. And you see that the lights, they're fine. There's no pyrotechnics. There's no lights. It's just lights. It's cool. So, exciting, right? Sorry, I don't use lights. Speaking of lights, I just use the sun. And it's a very rainy day here in Western New York. But the sun keeps popping out, so I keep touching my screen to try to make sure the light balance is okay. But, hey, it's why you watch me. For long stories about hating Toronto traffic. The next song was the opposite, so that's the second track on the album. Broken up there. Funky drummer intro, just this great drumming. Just Tom Skinner showing off, really, just great groove. And this is the funny thing, no one's dancing. No one's really dancing, and I don't understand why. This album is such a dance album. But I actually do know why. My son leans over and goes, the people who are dancing pretend to know how to dance to it. Because it's all funky rhythms. You can't just... it's all but I don't care. I'm just dancing. Oh, am I dancing poorly? I don't care. Reminds me of when I saw James Brown play at the Wang Center in Boston, in 2000. And everyone was sitting there with their jewels and their prosecco, and I was like the only person in the entire crowd standing and dancing, and I felt like an ass, and I was an ass. I was like a 23-year-old doofus. But what am I going to do? Watch James Brown perform in concert and sit there with my hands folded? Again, I'm just shocked that Tom can play bass and sing so well at the same time. But the thing about this band is every single song, every single part, you can't believe how well it goes together, how seamless it is. Leads into Speech Bubbles, where Johnny plays piano, Tom's on guitar. I was curious how the song would work live. It just works perfectly. Tom Skinner's playing mallets on the drums, and at a certain point, Johnny plays a harp, a dusty strings harp, like the one that my daughter plays. It's down in the basement. It made me happy to see that. Then we get to Free in the Knowledge, which I remember listening. I talked to this with my son on the way up to Toronto before the Carmageddon. Like, this is my least favorite song on the album because it feels the most like lyrically like Tom York on autopilot. But I thought that it might really work in concert, and it really did. And the reason that it works so well is Tom's voice. When we talk about about virtuosos, which I've talked about a lot, sometimes we overlook how good of a vocalist Tom York is. And when you see him live hitting these notes and singing, it's just gorgeous. And Tom Skinner isn't really playing drums here. He's, in the beginning, he's like playing, like, I think it's a Moog synthesizer, like with the little chords and stuff. Tell me in the comments if it's something else. That's a Kurzweil 244-8. You can tell me what it is. I don't care. Even though I just made fun of you, feel free to correct me. I'm not like a gearhead. But it's just so cool because he then jumps onto the drum set. And the great thing about Johnny playing bass is that he looks like a bass player. Like, he has a bass player mug when he's playing bass. Maybe he's just like thinking of his brother. I don't know what. And then of course Johnny gets out the bow and starts playing the bass of the bow and just gets super distracted, distorted. Everything gets really wild. It becomes a jam. This double hi-hat plays, goes right into the song, A Hairdryer, a song which I'm positive was named in a hotel when Tom was just looking around the room. This hi-hat jam. All of a sudden, Johnny's bass gets to be just sort of like minimalist and punctuated and just this great chaotic jam. And it's funny because he kept singing, look at all the pretty lights. I don't know if he's saying pretty lights or pretty lies, but I was listening to this song 2 days ago when I was putting up the Christmas lights in my house. That's how suburban I am. I'm on the ladder, putting up Christmas lights. Do you think he's going to break his neck? I don't know, honey. I'm sure he'll fall, but I don't know if we're lucky enough for him to break his neck. And just beautiful, hearing these songs together. And then leading on to Waving a White Flag. This is where Tom Skinner starts off with this just bizarrely beautiful. I think it's a Moog synthesizer. It's hard because there was a hockey player in Boston and Edmonton called Andy Moog, and then the keyboard is called a Moog, but I can't tell which one's which, so I'll just go in between them. I'm really pissing off the gearheads now. But it's just this arpeggiated, automated sound that's just so beautiful, and you can't really dance to it. But then he jumps and he drums along to this arpeggio, which is quite tough. And Tom's doing his sort of funky worm dance that he does. Next song is a new song I've never heard before, Colors Fly. This is where Stillman from Robert Stillman, the opening act, came out. He reminded me of Thomas Middleditch, the the improv comedian. He looked sort of like shell-shocked. I mean, he was good playing some sort of horn. This is cool because it was almost like Middle Eastern tonalities. And speaking, I keep coming back to Led Zeppelin, but what's this guy's name again? Skinner. Skinner is like playing put a tambourine on top of the hi-hat and is playing that sort of on the 1, 2, 3, 4, and that reminds me a lot of the drum solo from Whole Lotta Love, I think it is. Anyways, it's something that John Bonham would do in a lot of his drum solos, just have that, like, while everything else is going crazy, having a sort of consistent tambourine sound. It sort of reminds me with its weird microtonalities of King Gizzard. I don't know if they're sort of influencing each other or not. Tall Beer Man had been away for a while. And so I after crushing those beers that his girlfriend got him, and he had like a smaller friend next to him who was probably taller than me still, but he seemed small by comparison. Like they were talking the whole time. And this is the thing about Tall Beer Man. Is like I'm like, why is this guy here? Like there's no way this ox of a man is enjoying this concert on the deep level that I am, you know? Like what's he even doing? Is this here to get drunk? Is he just trying to impress these girls? Like what's going on with him? So he left for a while, and so I moved into his space and I was all psyched. And then it turns out, guess what he was doing? He was getting a couple more beers, and then he comes back, and of course he just parks, just goes right in front of me. Like I wasn't even there. Like I wasn't even there. But to be fair, I was like behind his girlfriend, so, he is going to do that because, anyways, very funny. More history of Tall Beer Man. Tall Boy Peroni Beer Man. Next song is another new one, Bending Hectic, which I didn't like quite as much, but what I like about it is that it's called Bending, and Johnny's playing bending guitars, and then everything resolves, and then the song itself resolves into a heavy metal part where I swear to God, tell me if I'm wrong, am I hearing a 4/4 drum beat? Am I hearing something that you could dance to? It seems as though this heavy metal part is like resolution for the whole concert, where you're just constantly in these weird 11/8, 19/4, 32/7 rhythms, and all of a sudden we have just kind of a pushing forward part. Skating on the Surface, by the way, I'm never tired of this. You might be tired of this video. I was never tired of this show at any point. Always excited. When I heard Skirting on the Surface, or Skating on the Surface, however you pronounce it, I realized that part of what I like about The Smile is that it's sort of all of The Reckoner. The whole thing is like the song The Reckoner off of Weird Fishes, just as a whole album. My notes are terrible because I have a 45-year-old eyeballs, which means I need glasses to see my phone. This is what I wrote. So, space, CC, CC. That's the only note that I didn't improve for this. I don't know what I was going to say there. Guitar, drums, voice. The voice is doing so much. Some of Tom Skinner's best work here, just so subtle but totally on point. I don't know how Tom is singing along to this bass line so well, again. And then they're almost a jam band at the end of the song, and I say that with the highest level of compliment because you can sort of get into it. Panavision, one of my favorite songs on the album. The only way that he interacts with the crowd is he just says scene change a couple times, so the piano comes out and he's playing piano and he's just kind of goofing around. It settles into this beautiful piano line, and a total highlight of the show is when the rest of the band comes in. Boom, 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 boom. Just a total highlight. But actually that wasn't the highlight. The highlight of this song, that was a highlight, but there's another highlight. The other highlight is the way that Tom York's voice sounds at the end when he's playing the piano and he's singing along with it. The only thing I've ever seen that's as close to this as far as seeing pianos being played in concert is Tom York himself playing Pyramid Song. If you've never seen Tom York play Pyramid Song with Radiohead, oh my God, it's the best. Like he has like this camera right on his head. I don't know if he still does it that way, but he's like playing, but it's that same kind of feeling. Another new song, People on Balconies. Another new song where the bass is the lead and Tom's playing it, kind of a jazzy song. Maybe this is the influence of Tom Skinner. This is just rock star Tom just dancing around and playing and like looking all cool. And this is his best bass playing. I just cannot believe, like I keep saying it, but find a bootleg of this somewhere. How the hell is he staying in rhythm and singing these notes and playing this bass line without thinking about it? It gives me a headache. And the crazy thing is, each of the new songs that he plays, they bring out the lyrics on a little music stand. So he's also trying to think about the lyrics. It's just the best thing about live performance like that is when you see someone, you just go, how? How did they do it? How? How are they so effortless? How? I get it, 10,000 hours, but how? I just don't get it. The Smoke, one of the best songs on the album. This is just a straight, that straight prog funk stuff I'm talking about. A solid groove. James Brown would approve. I'm just a dancing madman at this point. I always dance the same way to a show. When I like a show, I dance. I play drums on my thighs when I'm dancing. I do kind of this stuff, and then I half close my eyes and I roll my eyes up into my eyelids so that the lights are all blinking and I don't see anybody, and I just do that. I'm just out. I'm just gone. You know, I don't need psychedelics. I don't need alcohol like Tall Beer Man. I am just transported into another universe by this music, and that's where I am. Leading into You'll Never Work in Television Again, I have to admit something. I wanted to see the show. I love Tom York. I love Johnny Greenwood. I really appreciate Tom Skinner. I might even love him because I love that Sons of Kemet album. I don't know. But the real reason I went is I just wanted to see Bunga Bunga I Know in concert. I wanted to see that. I wanted to hear the words Bunga Bunga I Know come out of the mouth of Tom York. I would have paid the $250 per ticket. Ouch. I would have paid the $80 in gas. Ouch. I would have gone in Toronto traffic for a total, I believe, of 3 hours in traffic in Toronto by the end of the night. Ouch, ouch, ouch. To see Bunga Bunga I Know. Such a great song. And we have the redemption of Tall Beerman. The dude was freaking out. He had his beer up and he was dancing and his girlfriend was pissed. He didn't care. He was just in the vibe. I'm looking over and he's looking at me and we're just dancing. And Bunga Bunga, I know we're not Bunga Bungaing, that's a whole nother thing. But if you can Bunga Bunga without it being sexual harassment, that's what we were doing. And I felt this connection to Tall Beerman and I realized I totally misjudged Tall Beerman. Tall Beerman, I'm sorry. If you're watching this video, I'm sorry. I judged you because you fit the stereotype of the hockey players at my middle school who were mean to me. And I projected that onto you. And I gatekept you because I don't know what. But Tall Beerman, you and I were at the same show. You and I were in the same space. Okay? You and I were in the same place. We were one while watching this song because we were just, oh my God. Tall Beerman. One of my favorite show buddies I've ever had. Just wonderful. There's one more story about Tall Beerman I'll get to at the end. Then we get to the encores, which are great. Open the Floodgates, no drums, all three of them playing keyboards. Very cool way to what I thought was ended, but there's two more songs. Read the Room, one of these new songs, funky and hard, great hi-hat work here. Tom just goes ham on the bass. A new character was next to me because some people left, so I got to move up. That's why I was next to Tall Beerman for the last song. And this is what I call dark glasses, tripping balls, little dude. He was like a little, he wasn't even that short, but compared to Tall Beerman. And he had dark glasses on, and like in between every song, he would like get down on the floor and then just like, and get up. And I just think he was tripping balls. But I loved it because he was into it too, because most of the pit, even though I was fixing to be in the pit, there was not that much energy in the pit besides like my son, tripping balls, small guy, and Tall Beerman during a couple songs. So I was very appreciative of him. And the album, and then the show ends with Feeling Pulled Apart by Horses, which is a Tom York solo song. I'll talk about that in a second. Just a killer bass line that you need to see it played live. You just need to. It's got the trademark great bass work of Tom's solo work. And this is where I realized that it seems like this whole concert is like cuckolding Phil Selway, you know, that it's like, oh, you're not a good enough drummer, we need to get a better drummer. But it's also doing that to Colin Greenwood. I mean, obviously Ed O'Brien's not there, and that's a whole nother question. But like, it sort of feels like the rhythm section, like they needed to go outside of their marriage to find a rhythm section that really suited them completely. Anyways, cool kind of Riders on the Storm, crunchy groove here. And then it was funny because, you know, the show's over. And as Tall Beerman turns around to leave, I see that he's wearing a Pablo Honey t-shirt. Like an authentic 90s Pablo Honey t-shirt. And I'm like, oh man, this guy just slam dunk. I mean, he could dunk on me. But oh my God, I was like, oh, look at me and my gatekeeping ways. I'm judging Tall Beerman and he's rocking a Pablo Honey t-shirt. This dude rules. Damn it. I wish I was Tall Beerman. You know, as we were leaving, you know, my son said, you know, we're walking there and we're going on Yonge Street. And he sort of said like, oh, I guess they weren't going to play any Radiohead songs. And he was a little bit disappointed. And, you know, so they played the one Tom song. So that made me think of this. And I told him, Django, if they ever played a Radiohead song, that would mean Radiohead is dead. And this is why I'm so thankful. I saw Page and Plant in 1995, and they only played Led Zeppelin songs. And they played Led Zeppelin songs because it was nostalgia. because it's like when I saw Morrissey in 1992, he didn't play a single Smith song, but when I saw him 16 years later, he had like 5 Smith songs. It's like it's a sign of artistic death when you're going back to the well for your previous hits. This was way better than Tom and Johnny play Radiohead. Page and Plant play Zeppelin was fine. That was the best I was going to get, and I was happy to get that. And that's some of the most fun I've ever had at a show, okay? Because I love Led Zeppelin so much. But imagine if Led Zeppelin was still making music and Plant and Page needed an outlet to create something else and something new. Just amazing. It made me so thankful. And finally my son was like, yeah, that's true. I just really hope Radiohead tours again. And I do too. The good news for him is that they weren't better in 95, so it's fine. Like they don't get worse as they get older. They don't. They just don't. So if Radiohead ever plays again, that show will be as good as any show I've ever seen. And then, of course, took an entire goddamn hour to get on the Gardiner Expressway. Toronto, get your shit together. Stop building high-rises. Start building wider streets. Traffic cops. Mounties, right? What was that show? Not Northern Exposure. There was a TV show in the 90s about a Canadian Mountie. Due North. I watched that show. Diefenbaker was the name of the dog. Get those guys up there. Do something. Your whole tourism industry is going to falter, and I can't believe that people who live there like that either. Anyways, these are my Patreons. They give me money, which helps to offset the fact that I paid so much money to go see that show. But I was fixing to be in the pit. I hope to give you another concert tour later this week. It'll be Stromae back in Toronto. But I think now my son is sick, so I'm probably going to get sick, which means maybe my baby's going to get sick, which means maybe things are going to get bad around here. So I hope to have that video for you. Pray for Mojo. All right. So thank you for all that, okay? What'd you think? Have you seen the show? Have you seen Radiohead? Have you seen Smile? Are you Tall Beer Man? Hit me up. Hit me up in the comments, Tall Beer Man. I want to see you in Toronto. You and I, we're going to go out. We'll crush some beers. We'll laugh about what an asshole I am. All right. That's 3 swears for you this episode. Mark it. There's the camera.